Hi, Mr. Redding. This is your student Robert Mooneyham. Here is my state ID so that you know that I am who I say I am. And here is my audience. This guy, who's an engineering major at A&M. This young lady right here, who is an Aggie Sisters for Christ. She also goes to A&M. This other lady right here, who's also an Aggie Sisters for Christ, and she's a singer. And my roommates, Ben, and my other roommate, Bryce. Turn the camera around on you, Bryce. He will be filming for us tonight. This is an informative speech. So the goal of this speech is to inform you about a topic that you might not have known very much about when you came into the speech, and I promise you probably know nothing about this. So here goes, and the title of the speech is Borrowing Culture, Cats Becomes an International Sensation. And the speech is going to begin as soon as, because something's going on with the computer. Oh golly, I hope this is going to be all right. Hold up. Because now it's not the screen. Okay, there it is. Thank goodness. All right. And the speech begins right now. Ferraris, pizza, things that we as Americans tend to idealize and enjoy, but they didn't originate in America. They came from that not too distant continent, Europe. And yet, some way or another, they've been woven into our culture. That brings me to the topic of today's speech, which is the Broadway musical Cats, another part of European culture and international culture that has come into our American lifestyle and is now a big part of our culture. So, how did this idea of a musical about adults dressed up as cats singing and dancing on a stage come to be? Well, it starts with the poet T.S. Eliot. The concept originates from T.S. Eliot's book of Practical Cats. This was a thesis on feline psychology and sociology, which was published in 1939 for Eliot's godchildren, and the book contains 15 original poems written by Eliot himself. And here is our creative team. We have composer Andrew Lloyd Webber and lyricist Tim Rice. These guys had been wildly popular in the 1970s with musicals like Jesus Christ Superstar, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and Evita. These musicals had given them worldwide acclaim and had were able to help them accumulate millions of dollars. So in the late 1970s, these two decided that their next project would be creating a musical, creating a piece of theater that would be based on these poems that are written by T.S. Eliot in the 1930s. This next slide is titled A Catastrophe, and I think that's pretty funny because that was actually what one of the first audience members of this musical called this musical upon seeing it. In the beginning, this musical was not very well received. It faced a lot of adversity kind of coming out. Acclaimed director Harold Prince, who had actually directed Evita with Andrew Lloyd Webber, turned the project down because he simply told Lloyd Webber that he thought it was going to be a failure. Jane Judi Dench, Academy Award-winning actress, was selected to play Grizabella the Glamour Cat. There's her picture right there, but unfortunately, she never got to go on stage because in the early processes of rehearsal, she ruptured her Achilles tendon. There was a bomb scare on the opening night of the play, and they actually had to evacuate the audience because of that. And the reviews were very lackluster in the early stages. A lot of people didn't quite understand the idea. They couldn't fit with the concept. So not a very easy time for the original London production. But nonetheless, it did become a hit on Broadway and internationally. The original production ran in London for 8,949 performances, and the Broadway production ran for 7,397 performances. Now, according to an article in Entertainment Magazine, The Age, this was beat by Les Miserables in London and by Phantom of the Opera here in New York. But it did win 7 Tony Awards, including Best Musical in 1983. It grossed $408 million worldwide. And Memory has soared on the international Billboard charts. It's been covered by the likes of Barbra Streisand and Barry Manilow. So it's become very popular, and it really helped on the early stages of the production kind of get some buzz generated around the show and help sell tickets. This next slide right here is called No Language Barrier. And I really do love this quote. This comes from this guy right here, Michael Gruber. He portrayed Munkenstraft in the Broadway production. When asked why he thought the show was successful by Broadway beating 98, he said, international tourists can come and watch it because there's no language barrier. It's a very simple storyline, and of course the affinity for feline culture across the nations has made the show very popular with tourists. It was in some ways the first true Broadway spectacle. People weren't, New York audiences, American audiences weren't used to seeing this kind of aesthetic quality in their productions. It was one of the first family-oriented musicals. You could bring your kids, your nieces, your nephews, and they could come and watch it and really get something out of it and enjoy it as a family. And of course, it's Christian imagery and themes. In the 1982 New York Times article, the show is praised for it portraying cats as spiritual beings, which I really like because the story focuses around a godlike character whose name is Old Deuteronomy, who brings the cats together, and he is going to pick one cat who's eventually going to ascend to the Heaviside layer and basically go into cat heaven. So those kind of, that religious imagery, those themes really connected with international and of course American audiences and made the show very popular and understandable. This next slide is called Cats to the Future. This show is still going very strong today. The musical has already been revived twice on Broadway and the West End. Tour is planned for the U.S. in 2019. According to another New York Times article, the first movie adaptation is set for release on December 20th of 2019. The movie is going to star Sir Ian McKellen, James Corden, Jennifer Hudson, Taylor Swift, Idris Elba, and Judi Dench in the lead roles. So that's something to look forward to there. So she kind of gets her redemption there too, I guess, because she didn't get to play the character in the 1981 production. So now, 39 years later, she's finally going to get to be a part of this project. So 38 years later, the memory still lives on. The dream of a few Brits is still this cultural milestone. And I think this musical is just a perfect example of really how our American culture works. We borrow from other cultures and from other ways of life. And those things wind up becoming woven into our American experience. So I once talked to an English teacher on the subject of cats, and she told me when I went to New York City, I knew there were three things I had to do. I had to go see the Statue of Liberty, I had to go see the Empire State Building, and I had to go see cats. And I think that says a lot about who we are as Americans, and it says a lot about a show about adults dressed as cats singing and dancing on stage can come to this country and be such a big success. It's all about learning to love and appreciate other people's cultures and allowing those type of entertainment and food and businesses and products coming into America and becoming part and woven into our culture. Thank you.